Hey everyone, and welcome back to The Explainer. I am so thrilled to have you here today. We're going to dive deep into our source material to decode the complex and honestly, sometimes shockingly ruthless logic of social behavior. We're going to break down the evolutionary rules that fundamentally change how you look at the animal kingdom and, maybe even how you look at yourself. Let's get right into it.
Okay, let's dive into this roadmap. Today we're looking at 1. The group selection myth. 2. 3 rules of behavior. 3. Game theory and cooperation. 4. Tournament versus pair bonding. And finally, 5. Where do humans fit?
Section 1. The group selection myth. To kick things off, we really need to challenge some preconceived notions about nature. Think back to those classic nature documentaries you grew up with. The ones with the sweeping orchestral music and dramatic animal sacrifices. We kinda need to unlearn a fundamental lesson those shows taught us.
Which brings us to a classic question. Why do animals cooperate in the first place? For decades, we were all taught this idea, popularized by a zoologist named Wynne Edwards back in the 60s, that animals behave and even sacrifice themselves for the quote-unquote good of the species. It's known as group selection. And hey, it sounds beautifully noble, right? But evolutionary biologists now know it's almost entirely wrong.
And this famous story brilliantly illustrates why. You probably know the myth. A massive herd of wildebeest needs to cross a crocodile-infested river. Out of nowhere, an elderly wildebeest bravely steps up to the edge, flings himself in, and sacrifices himself so the rest of the herd can cross while the crocodiles are distracted. But the reality? If you watch long enough, you realize that old wildebeest isn't some martyr. Actually, scratch that. There's no noble sacrifice happening here at all. He's literally just getting shoved into the river from behind by a herd that is entirely focused on prioritizing its own genes.
Section 2. 3 rules of behavior. So if animals aren't acting for the good of the species, what is actually driving them? What are the hard rules of behavioral evolution?
The source material breaks down 3 foundational building blocks that optimize behavior. Think of it like a physical trait. Evolutionary mechanics optimize physical things, like a giraffe evolving a massive heart just to pump blood all the way up that long neck, right? Well, evolutionary logic sculpts behavior the exact same way, using these 3 steps.
Step 1 is individual selection, basically being selfish. An animal behaves in ways that maximize the passing on of its own genes. Everything an animal does, whether it's running incredibly fast from a predator or growing some bright, ridiculous tail feathers to attract a mate, is just a mechanism for individual genetic success. As the old saying goes, sometimes a chicken is just an egg's way of making another egg.
Step 2 introduces a really fascinating twist: kin selection. The great geneticist J.B.S. Haldane summed it up with this brilliant quote. He said, "I will gladly lay down my life for 2 brothers or 8 cousins." Evolution relies on this vicious mathematical logic. Think about it. You share 50% of your genes with a full sibling and about 12.5% with a cousin. So from an evolutionary math standpoint, passing your genes on by helping your relatives survive is just as effective as reproducing yourself.
Let's see how this actually plays out in the real world. Researchers Seyfarth and Cheney did this famous study where they hid a speaker in the bushes and played a recording of a baby vervet monkey screaming. Now, get this. The mother immediately looked at the bushes, sure, but every other monkey in the troop immediately turned and stared right at the mother. They deeply understand and track kinship. They know exactly whose kid is throwing a tantrum, and they know to stay completely out of it. It's wild.
Section 3. Game theory and cooperation. Now we're moving to the 3rd rule, reciprocal altruism. What happens when animals cooperate with non-relatives? To figure this out, evolutionary biologists actually had to borrow some math from economists.
Think about the famous prisoner's dilemma from game theory. When we break down the payoffs, look at where you win big. The highest mathematical reward comes when you cheat and your opponent cooperates. Stabbing the other guy in the back literally gives you the best outcome. If both of you cooperate, the reward is good, but it's not the best. And if you cooperate while the other guy cheats, you get the absolute lowest sucker payoff. So if cheating is mathematically the smartest move, why on earth do animals ever cooperate?
The answer came from a huge computer simulation run by Robert Axelrod. He ran thousands of strategies against each other, and one incredibly simple strategy destroyed the competition. It's called tit for tat, and it works perfectly because it hits 4 specific criteria. It's nice, meaning it starts by cooperating. It's retaliatory. If you cheat, it punishes you in the very next round. It's forgiving. The second you stop cheating, it goes right back to cooperating. And lastly, it's clear. As our source material points out, tit for tat might lose a couple of individual battles, but it wins the entire war by balancing cooperation with strict, immediate vigilance against cheaters.
And animals absolutely use this in the wild. Take vampire bats. They live in these massive communes and will actually regurgitate blood to feed their non-relatives' babies. It's gross, but very sweet. But researchers found that if they artificially pumped a little air into a bat's stomach so she looked completely full, but she wasn't sharing her blood, the other bats recognized her as a cheater and completely refused to feed her babies the next time around. Even stickleback fish, which, let's be honest, are not the smartest creatures, use tit for tat. If you trick a stickleback with mirrors into thinking its partner fish is holding back during a fight, that fish will remember and refuse to cooperate with that reflection later on. No way, right?
Section 4, Tournament versus Pair Bonding. Okay, so we've got our 3 rules: individual selection, kin selection, and reciprocal altruism. Let's shift gears and apply all this evolutionary logic to solve a massive biological puzzle.
I want you to imagine you're a field biologist. You just discovered a brand new species, but all you have are 2 skulls, one adult male, one adult female. Armed with the logic we just went over, how does their size difference alone reveal their entire social life?
It all comes down to 2 categories. If the male skull is significantly larger than the female skull, you're looking at a tournament species, like a baboon or a peacock. In these species, males fight aggressively for mating rights. Just 5% of the males account for 95% of the mating. But if the skulls are the exact same size, you found a pair bonding or monogamous species, like South American marmosets. Aggression is super low here, and the males are essentially the soccer dads of the animal kingdom. They're highly involved in raising the kids.
What is just incredibly fascinating here is how the evolutionary math plays out for pair bonding species. Because the males are fully involved parents, females aren't looking for massive muscular aggressive mates anymore. They select males for their parenting skills. This leads to some really unique traits. Lifespans between genders totally even out. There are high rates of females giving birth to twins because there are 2 parents around to feed them. And, this is crazy, even higher rates of female cuckoldry, meaning females are actually more likely to bail on the kids to find another mate because they know the dad is biologically programmed to stay behind and raise them.
Section 5, Where do humans fit? All right, we've broken down the rules. We've seen how physical differences completely predict behavioral strategies in animals. So, let's answer the ultimate question.
Take a guess based on everything you've just learned. Look at human behavior. Look at human physical dimorphism, the average size difference between men and women. Are we a highly aggressive tournament species, or are we an equal-sized, highly parental pair bonding species?
Well, the truth is, humans are a perfectly confused mix. We sit directly in the middle of all this. Men are on average larger than women, but we aren't twice as large, like male baboons. Human fathers are highly involved in parenting, but statistically, it's not always a perfect 50-50 split like marmosets. Our difference in lifespan is somewhere in between too. We are absolutely not a classic tournament species, but we're definitely not a classic pair bonding species either.
And you know, this split nature is reflected perfectly in human culture. The vast majority of people today live in pair-bonded monogamous relationships. However, historically and traditionally, most human cultures actually allowed polygamy. It usually took one of 2 forms: economic polygamy, where wealth concentration allows a few men to have many wives, or demographic polygamy, which we often see in warrior cultures, where high male mortality leaves a huge shortage of men. Yet, even in cultures that allow it, the vast majority of individuals still pair bond. Our biology is literally stuck right in the middle. Which brings us to the end of our journey today, leaving us with a pretty provocative question. We aren't purely selfish baboons, and we aren't perfectly harmonious marmosets. We are a biological species playing really complex evolutionary games. Will our completely confused biology ever let us reach a true behavioral equilibrium, or are we just destined to keep navigating this messy middle ground forever? Something to think about. Thank you so much for joining me in this explainer. I really hope decoding the source material today helped explain the fascinating logic behind why we do what we do. Until next time, keep learning.